Zombie games are a dime a dozen. If you're a fan of the genre like me, then this isn't really an issue, but it does mean that it can be a little difficult finding unique experiences that bring fresh new ideas to the table. And despite publishers and developers dumping more and more hundreds of millions of dollars into every AAA project, it's ironically a nearly 10-year-old indie game that I've recently found myself obsessing over. Death Road to Canada might not be able to provide vast wide-open sandboxes or spectacular visuals like its big-budget competition, but it's packed full of so much heart and charm and manages to bring a lot of familiar yet seemingly disparate mechanics together in some really clever ways, serving as a great reminder that at the end of the day, great game design will always shine through. Now it's tempting to just want to call Death Road to Canada the Oregon Trail with zombies, but that exact game apparently already exists, and truth be told, that's really not giving it enough credit. Although to be clear, Death Road makes no attempts to shy away from what was clearly one of its biggest inspirations. From the road trip premise to the heads-up display, user interface, and plethora of random events you can encounter, anybody with fond memories of Mech's classic computer lab staple should feel right at home here. Rather than heading west with the dream of starting a new life, the characters in Death Road start their adventure off in Florida and journey north with the hopes of making it to the one nation still believed to be free of the zombie threat. Although I've gotta be honest, this idea that Canada will end up as humanity's last stronghold in the face of a zombie apocalypse has never made any sense to me. I mean, surely more isolated locations with smaller populations like New Zealand or some of Japan's smaller islands would have a much better chance at holding out. Although I guess the average American also has no hope of completing those trips. Anyway, Death Road to Canada wasn't content to just copy what everybody had loved about the Oregon Trail, slap a zombie-themed coat of paint on top of it all, and call it a day. Instead, Death Road smartly uses that game's framework as a foundation, wisely building upon its established mechanics while also introducing so many of its own unique ideas and innovations that it moves beyond being a mere imitation. Like everybody knows that one of the best parts of the Oregon Trail was naming the various members of your party after your friends and family. That way'd be extra personal and, let's be honest, darkly hilarious when one of them eventually succumbed to the effects of dysentery or drowned during an ill-advised river crossing. Death Road to Canada one-ups this by also allowing you to create avatars for all your characters, and the surprisingly robust creation tools mix well with the retro-inspired visuals, which allow the player's imagination to fill in the gaps, so you should have little issues coming up with a passable caricature of most of your acquaintances. Or if you're making a video and you don't want to dox everybody you know, you can also come up with some decent recreations of some of your favorite characters. And you aren't just limited to creating the members of your starting party. Unlike the Oregon Trail, it's possible to replenish and ideally expand your party by recruiting new members, so any created characters that you save but don't choose to start off with are added into the pool of potential survivors that you can encounter. And your survivors won't just be a bunch of interchangeable palette swaps. Each character has their own personality and skills, and while it's possible to influence these to a degree by assigning perks and traits, most of them will be randomly generated at the start of each run and also hidden to the player until revealed by an event. I know some people may be annoyed over the inability to fine-tune their creations exactly as they see fit, but I find it adds to the whole experience. I love that you can't just create the perfect starting group to easily breeze through the whole game, and the possibility for a character who was a steadfast ally during one playthrough to end up betraying you at the first possible opportunity in another definitely keeps you on your toes during every single run. What's really impressive though is how all of your characters' personalities and abilities come into play during the various dilemmas the group may encounter. There's the stuff you would expect, like characters with good composure being better suited to loot spooky abandoned stores, or characters with a high mechanical skill coming in handy when it comes time to make repairs to your vehicle, but there's also a lot of less obvious outcomes, like how it turns out characters with an irritating trait can throw a pesky chess master off their game, or oblivious characters suffering less morale penalties due to their overall lack of awareness. It's also possible for personality clashes to negatively affect the group, as it turns out even during a zombie apocalypse, some people will still find an excuse to insert politics into every conversation so they can blame their party of choice for everything. And naturally, when one of their disinterested cardmates tells them to shut it, they won't be too happy about it. By extension, like-minded individuals have the potential to boost each other's morale, and keeping your survivors in relatively good spirits is essential, as low morale inevitably leads to infighting, which can lead to more frequent horde attacks, malcontents demanding one of their fellow passengers get kicked out of the group, or alternatively just sneaking off in the middle of the night and potentially stealing some much-needed supplies if they turn out to be a disloyal asshole. So while Death Road to Canada might just look like some mindless mobile time sink, there's a lot going on here behind the scenes, and all of it gives the game a strong claim to being the definitive road trip simulator. It's entirely possible to be in the middle of a seemingly perfect trip only for 1 or 2 bad days to cause the mood to shift and people to begin turning on each other over petty nonsense, or for a group to find themselves stuck with that one annoying asshole who just throws off the whole vibe. And while other games might saddle the player with a companion who's written to be unlikable, it almost never has the same tangible effect on gameplay that it has here. On the flip side though, when you do actually manage to put together a solid group, you appreciate it all the more. Now, the purposely irreverent tone means I can't imagine too many players will be getting emotional over their experiences. I mean, if you do actually manage to make it to Canada, you end up being saved by a giant mecha mountie, so you know this isn't exactly a tearjerker. Still, it does kind of suck when you lose a beloved member of the team, and you might even find yourself wary of replacing them out of fear of throwing off the group dynamic, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. I mean, in most RPGs, the only thing that matters when scouting potential new party members is their class and stats, but in Death Road to Canada, whether or not they'll hit it off with the rest of the group is actually a legitimate concern. Now, all of that stuff alone would make Death Road to Canada worth the price of admission, but I still haven't even touched on what most people would consider to be the actual gameplay. See, during most days, your group is given the option of choosing between a few locations to investigate, either to search for supplies or help out a survivor in need. During these sections, the game transitions to a 2D roguelite, and the gameplay can alternate between a beat-em-up or shoot-em-up depending on your current weapon. And just like the old-school titles it's emulating, the gameplay here is deceptively simple. Using a controller, you can easily navigate environments using either the directional pad or analog stick, depending on your preference, and interacting with objects, cycling between weapons, and taking down zombies can all be handled with the face buttons. Now, you can switch between characters on the fly and also swap items from one another and change the tactics for AI companions in the pause menu, but none of that stuff is actually necessary, so even the most clueless of gamers should have no issues getting their feet wet. More seasoned players, on the other hand, will appreciate that the game's role-playing elements aren't just limited to the text-based portions of the adventure, and allows for far more strategy and varied gameplay than you might expect going into it. For example, assigning characters the martial artist perk allows them to dispatch the zombies with an unarmed melee attack, but the trade-off is that they can't use guns or chainsaws, so while they're great in the early game, they can wind up being a major liability later on, unless you invest into some serious fitness training for them. Having a character who's good with guns, on the other hand, is useful when you need to do some crowd control, but using a gun obviously requires having the correct ammunition, and dedicating a character to the art of marksmanship means you'll probably have to neglect some other important skills. Then there's anime fans who start off with an unbreakable samurai sword and can turn into a magical and overpowered anime princess if they max out their morale, and pyromaniacs who are only able to use a blowtorch, which, while undoubtedly effective for taking out zombies, also has a high probability of causing friendly fire. No pun intended. Messing around with all of these is just a ton of fun, and being able to upgrade perks and unlock more of both using Zombo points that are accumulated during your playthroughs provides a welcome sense of progression that carries over outside of each individual run. And I haven't even touched on the numerous rare survivors who you can encounter and usually recruit. While some of these are just based on generic archetypes, there's also a lot of copyright-safe special guest characters. Many of these have unique combat abilities or items or overpowered stats, although a few like Garfield really just seem to exist to fuck with the player. I really don't want to spoil all of the ones I've encountered so far, but I have to give a shout out to my personal favorite, which is Jason. While Jason's great in a fight, I also soon discovered that his companions had the habit of mysteriously disappearing whenever his morale dropped too low. And while this might not necessarily have improved my odds of making it to Canada, it did put a dumb childlike smile on my face, so it was totally worth it. Now, the few times when you're not trying to avoid being eaten by zombies or deciding the best way to deal with an annoying group of bandits, you'll be able to get some reprieve at a trading camp, which, as their name implies, allows you to barter for supplies and in most cases find a potential new party member. Having an abundance of food is key here, as not only does it obviously allow your characters to enjoy a meal at the end of each day, but it also serves as the primary form of currency in Death Road to Canada, although a few merchants are willing to give you food in exchange for gas or spare weapons. And I have to say that making food your primary currency was a great design choice, as it can force the player into some tough decisions. Do you spend almost all of your remaining food on that great sword for your melee specialist and risk the morale penalty, hoping that you'll come across a decent stockpile soon, or hold on to your food and run the risk of getting stuck in a siege with nothing but frying pans and golf clubs? Successfully completing the trek to Canada is difficult and will likely take you a couple of attempts, unless you happen to just get absolutely blessed by the RNG gods and encounter a great guest character or stumble across a fantastic classic weapon. And you might be thinking that once you've done so, you've more or less seen everything the game has to offer, give or take a few random encounters. However, if you decide to look through the various game modes, you'll discover that isn't the case, as Death Road to Canada offers an abundance of modifiers that range from increasing or decreasing the length of the trip, upping the amount of zombies, apparently changing up mechanics so that's more of a traditional RPG, or just allowing you to start off with a full party. And I guess this is a good time to point out that the entire game can be completed in 4-player local co-op, giving Death Road to Canada massive potential as a party game. Having players swapping in and out whenever their characters join or depart the party seems like it'd be a ton of fun. And you just know that there'd be some good-natured shit talk every time someone's character was revealed to be a bit of a dumbass. And in spite of its T rating, I'd argue that Death Road to Canada is a completely family-friendly affair. Any violence here is strictly of the cartoon variety, and with Dingus being the game's idea of an obscenity, I can't imagine most parents would find anything all that objectionable here. You know, it's not often these days that I find a game that manages to genuinely surprise me. I mean, I've been playing games literally since I can remember, and after almost 30 years, a lot of them just sort of blend together. But something tells me I won't have that problem with Death Road to Canada. Don't let the $15 price tag fool you. According to Steam, I've sunk 45 hours into it already, and I expect that number is going to grow a good bit more before I've had my fill. This is a fully fleshed out experience that offers more content than a lot of fully priced releases, and in my opinion, the only reason it isn't currently regarded as a modern classic is that more people haven't played it. And hopefully this video will convince at least a few of you out there to remedy that. What is up, people? Dusty here, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you didn't, then I have no clue why you'd still be hanging around by this point, but whatever, you do you. However, if you did enjoy it, then why not leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel? That way you can be kept up to date with all my latest content. Or don't let me tell you how to live your life. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. I'm out.